Welcome to Season 2 of the Pull Hook Golf Podcast. Here's your hosts, Matt Cook and Bobby Brown. Welcome back, everybody, to the Pull Hook Golf Podcast with my co-host, Mr. Bobby Brown. We're on to episode number 17. We're in the second season already. I can't believe it, Bobby. And my goodness, did you not disappoint once again with having a fantastic guest on? Why don't you give a quick little intro?
I will. Well, first of all, I can't believe he did this. He's going to do this because he's a very, very, very private guy. And I got to tell you, I'm super stoked to have one of my best friends out there, Lance Bennett, on this week. We have been staying together, Lance, since probably 2010. I haven't roomed with anybody more than I have with him. We've been through some great experiences together. We've been through some disappointing experiences together. He's always had my back when things are going good or things haven't been going good for me. He's always been there, little pep talk guy and that kind of stuff, and vice versa. We fight like brothers sometimes, for sure. You know, we're that close and everything. And Lance, just wanted to say thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate you.
Yes, thanks, Lance, for coming.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So without further ado, let's dive right into it. So Lance, I always found it interesting because I always thought that there was just one direct path to becoming a PGA Tour caddy or getting into professional caddying in and of itself. But tell us a little bit about this, because in hearing Bobby's, and then we just had Scott McGinnis on last week, it's quite interesting to kind of hear, how did you get into caddying and how did you get into the professional side of it?
Right. Yeah. So I would say, and Bobby would probably agree, there's so many different ways to get into this business. Mine was not really all that exciting, other than I was a club professional in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Worked in the bag room, worked my way up into the shop at a few different private clubs here in North Dallas area. And then at the time, it was at Glen Eagles Country Club in Plano, Texas, where when I was there, we had like Fred Couples lived in our neighborhood when he lived here for a short while, and a couple other tour pros. And we had one guy, his name was Brad Elder, who is now a teaching professional in the area. But he was like this, young phenom, one of the best high school players in Texas. I mean, he went to the University of Texas, was an All-American, I think 3 out of the 4 years. He finished, he lost in the semifinals of the U.S. Amateur when Matt Kuchar won in 97. And so he was a very good college player, came out with a lot of hype. Well, when he was in high school, his dad was the general manager at Glen Eagles. So he and I played together a ton. And then we went to college down in Austin. We still played a lot together. And I would drive down to Austin to hang out with the team and hang out with him and have some fun. But when he would come home, we'd play a lot. And then, he easily got his tour card in the late 90s and after he finished. And then I remember it was right at the end of the 2002 season. I had worked for him at like a Q school, and I worked for some other friends at different stages of Q school around Dallas area, right? And he's like, I joked, he just got rid of his caddy. And I was like, I joked with him, and I really wasn't that serious. And I said, hey, Brad, don't, when you're doing interviews, think about me, give me a look, right? Didn't think anything of it. And another word was said, went about my business. Like 3 or 4 weeks later, I get a phone call. Hey, were you serious when you said that? I'm like, I don't know, I could be. I mean, I'm single, no kids at the time. I had no overhead, I'm just, whatever, living life, right? And I go, I don't know, maybe. And he's like, well, I need somebody. I'd love for you to come out with me. I'm like, all right. So he had just come off of he got shoulder surgery at the time. He had bursitis in one of his shoulders. And so he didn't start playing until April. But he was like, hey, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to come off. I'm going to have a medical. I'm going to play play a couple of, back then it was the web.com tour, now the Corn Ferry tour. He's like, I'm going to play 2 or 3 of those. Rehab starts, and then I'm going to start wherever. I'm like, okay. So I kind of took a leave of absence from my current, teaching gig, which actually I was not at Glen Eagles at the time. I was at a club in South Lake, Texas, closer to Fort Worth, Tiburon Country Club. which is a really good place.
Yeah, that is.
And at the time, Rory Sabatini was living in that neighborhood, and so I kind of picked his brain a little bit about, hey, I'm going to come out and caddy. Here's what I'm caddying for, and so he kind of helped me out a little bit. And then, we started out, and I would say, if he wasn't a good friend, I would have been fired the first week. He basically threw me in the fire and was like, figure it out. So, like Bobby, I was like, when you say go walk a golf course, I literally walked the golf course. Like, didn't do anything, just walked and looked. I didn't look at heads, check runouts, check, get extra. Cause I didn't know any better. I didn't know anything.
Sure.
I didn't know. I knew what a yardage book was from doing Q schools, but I didn't really know the nuances of learning, what players need and all that. And God bless him. He was just, hey, figure it out. And so my first year or two, I literally and I was lucky enough to get to know Joe LaCava, Mike Fluff Cowan, Bones, and that's who I watched and that's who I observed. And
Good
I picked
mentors.
and I'm like, all right, I can, and so we didn't have any success. It was awful. I think we made in 20 tournaments, he made $75,000 and we made 5 cuts.
Oof.
That's surprising because he's historically a sweet swinger, isn't he? From what I remember,
He's a ball striker. He's so good. But his probably downfall was he went and tried to get his swing better, but he went to Hank Haney. And that
no.
absolutely
bogey.
destroyed.
Oh, no.
They killed him. Because then instead of just playing golf, he got so much into what his swing looked like. And you wanted to, constantly looking at his backswing and looking at this and looking at that. And you just, it just didn't work for him.
Did he go down the Ben Hogan path?
Excuse me.
He fought. What do you mean?
So many guys chase the Ben Hogan swing, right? And Hank Haney
Right.
teaches that very much. So, did you see kind of him going down that path at all?
No, not really. He was just, I think instead of just worrying about playing golf, putting a score on the card, I think he was just so into what it looked like. And we all know, there's a lot of guys that have great looking golf swings and can't make it. And there's guys with awful golf swings that make the print money. So,
True.
if you can repeat it and do it, then that's the way you go. And he just, then he fought injuries. And I literally had nowhere to go from there. And from there, I had a couple friends on the LPGA Tour, and they, one of them being John Yarborough, who works for Scott Stallings. He was out there at the time, and he set me up with Vicky Getz Ackerman, who is a 2-time U.S. amateur champ and played All-American at Georgia.
Player.
One of the best female amateurs probably in the last 30 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And 40 years maybe. And so I did a year with her in 2004, and then I kind of parlayed that into decent success with her, one of her better years, into Paula Creamer, her rookie year.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that.
That was from an injury. Her caddy got hurt. He broke his ankle walking down into a bunker on wet grass and slipped and snapped his ankle and was out for 4 months. And so I stepped in, and we won our first week together. Literally our first week. Met each other. First week, win. Right out of the gate.
Wow.
And so we kind of went from there, and we reeled off quite a bit of good ones. And then we ended up winning again. We won one of our last weeks together. We won Evian Championship in France. Before
Well, that's
it was
amazing, right?
It is now.
Okay.
We won by 8. First time we'd ever been there, and everyone's saying how you can't win your first time. The greens are too hard to read. Blah blah blah. Her big thing is being everything's pink, right? And she's the Pink Panther, right? And so their logos are this hot pink. Everything logo is hot pink. And I literally rolled into the guys. I'm like, guys, y'all are playing for second. We're winning this thing this week. And we won by 8. It was so funny. It was.
So you had 2 wins under your belt, and then she went back to her caddy after the injury?
Yeah, that was the promise. So her dad told me no matter what happens, because he didn't do anything when the guy broke his ankle, it was at work. It wasn't like he was goofing off and doing something dumb. It was at work in a practice round, and they promised. Her dad said, Lance, you're making this as hard as it can be. I said, hey, look, that's the agreement. I'm not going to try to convince you otherwise. at some point you may want to come back to me. I just want to do it the right way. And he was like, I really appreciate it. And I ended up going back to her for like when her caddy had the wife was having a baby. I went back and worked a couple of weeks, and we almost won one of those. And I knew her caddy was just like sweating bullets, like here he goes again. He's gonna win with her again, and I'm gonna lose my job. But
it's like Tom Brady out there with Drew Bledsoe. Tom Brady comes into the game. I mean, it's like I'm having some serious NFL quarterback like backup vibes. Right. That finally the young stud comes in and just starts crushing it. It's hard to go back to the old caddy at that point. I'm actually shocked that they held true to that, because
they did.
Clearly you had a connection.
And I'm still friends with her. I went to her wedding, and we've stayed friends, and it's been great. And then from there, I kind of parlayed that into Julie Inkster. Her caddy had quit when Michelle Wee turned pro to go work for her, because that was kind of their agreement that, hey, when Michelle turns pro. And so Julie called me, and I worked for her to the end of the season. And then Lorena Ochoa became available. And so she hired me, and we went on a phenomenal, right at the beginning of her big run was when I started working for her. And so we had this incredible run, 18 tournaments together. We made like 2 wins and like 6 second place finishes and like number 1 in every stat. And then, the old, kind of the knife in the back kind of thing from another caddy. Oh, no. And she fell for
I know who that guy was.
He go, and he's a shady guy. And, I got iced for him, but it ended up working out, because a month later I got a phone call from another caddy, Brian Reed out here, who said, "Hey, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm, just hanging out at home. I made good money this year. I'm just chilling." And he's like, "Well, there's 2 guys on the then Nationwide Tour, now Corn Ferry, was like, hey, they're looking." And he was like, golly, I'm drawing a blank. It was Matt Kuchar, and the other one, drawing a blank. But it was a guy that never did anything. And he's like, "Take your pick. Which one would you like?" And I said, well, I had such a bad experience in 03 on the PGA Tour. I'm like, God, do I really want to go back to the PGA Tour? I have such a good reputation and built up a strong resume on the LPGA. I could have my pick of who were the top players. And so, you know what, I'll do it. And I said, call Matt Kuchar. I looked up his stats. He was going to get his card back. And so that was 2005. And Matt calls me. He said, I'll give you 2 weeks. It was Eugene, Oregon, and Boise, Idaho. And he said, if we get along well, you can have the job. I'm like, all right. So we did. And we finished 13th at Boise, and then miscut at Eugene. And he goes, job's yours. And I was like, okay. And so literally, then we went almost 10 years.
Yeah, you had one of the longest, I was looking it up, you have one of the longest stretches of player-caddy relationships on tour.
Really? I wouldn't even think that. But
it's one of the...
It's a long time.
There's a lot under the 10-year mark. But once you get over a decade, and it's like, you think of some of these relationships, right? Like Tiger and Fluff and so on and so forth, or Tiger and Stevie and some of the others that obviously I'm bringing up some of the biggest relationships possible. Bones and Phil. I mean, there were only a few. Yeah, Fluff and Furyk are also up there now, but weren't previously when. So, for instance, when you and Matt stopped, like you were one of, I want to say like maybe 7 caddies that had caddied for the player for more than 10 years.
Yeah, it was not quite 10 years. It was just under 10 years, but it was close. Yeah, it was close.
It was right.
I got a question. Lance, I got a question for you, bud. Were you still single and everything when you were working for Lorena?
I was. Yes.
Were you? This is kind of going to be a little funny story here or something like that, and you don't have to answer it because I already heard it from another caddy, but years ago. But is there a lot more fun going on back then on the let's say with the guys as far as having some beers and on the PGA Tour or on the LPGA? Is it a little more loose? Or was it back then?
I would say it's probably about the same.
It's about the same. Gotcha.
Back then, yeah. I mean, obviously, everyone's this day and age on the PGA Tour is a little more buttoned up, and there's not quite as much of that. And
yeah,
I would say, 15 years ago, I would say LPGA Tour was it was still business, but it was a
Do you
lot
know
more.
where I'm going? Do you know where I'm going with this? Because a mutual friend of ours that's a caddy, Bill Harkey, says that you're going to kill me for this. But he said that you were working for Lorena. It was so funny. And 4 or 5 of you guys went out super late one night. She wasn't in contention on Sunday morning. You guys were all staying at the same hotel. Does this sound familiar to you? And you guys shut it down maybe 4 or 5 in the morning. I guess Lorena was a big wake up early person, go to the gym, totally professional and that kind of stuff. And you guys were rolling into the hotel when she was waking up and going down to the gym. Is there any truth to that story? And you're like, oh my God, I need a cold shower.
There was one. Well, I don't know. I don't remember seeing her. I don't remember seeing her.
You were hammered. That's why.
She may have seen me, but I don't remember seeing her. So maybe I don't. But yeah, there was. Yeah.
Our viewers love the shit, man. They love to hear the shit.
So Lance, you can neither confirm nor deny the story.
50-50 thing. I remember that, but I don't remember seeing Lorena. So yeah,
I can remember it, but not seeing Lorena.
It's at least a half truth. I mean,
I will say this. I probably stayed, Lance, how many times have we stayed together? Minimum 50. Minimum 50 times.
Yes.
We stayed together. We just recently stayed together at the US Open, minimum 50 times. And I can tell you and I'm being conservative, over the 50 times that I've stayed with Lance, I could probably count on one hand how many beers I've seen him drink. Because you don't drink. Yeah, you don't drink.
Very rarely.
No,
I have a margarita with my wife when we go to get Mexican food or something like that. But on the road, I don't. I mean, I never have a drink on the road.
Professional.
Yeah, you guys really are. I give you a lot of credit because I'm sure there's a whole bunch of shenanigans and hooligans that go on with caddies that are out there week in and week out. So touche to you guys because you take it seriously.
I would say not as much as there used to be, but there are still a few guys that I'm sure do that. Yeah, I'm sure there are a few guys that still do that. I don't think nearly as much as there used to be. But, I'm married with 3 kids and it's all business for me. I'm out there. I'm not out there to have a good time other than on the golf course. I'm out there to do my job, go back to my hotel room, grab food on the way back. I mean, Bobby can tell you too, I don't go out for dinner very much.
We don't. We never leave. We're introverts.
Oh my God, you guys sound like me. Anytime I would travel, it was room service.
That's
we're introverts.
Up to go food on the way back to the room, and I eat in the room most of the time.
Almost all the time. I'd say 90% of the time. He's right. It's usually Chipotle is usually your go-to or pizza.
Oh, Lance, me and you are going to be just fine, bud.
Pizza. He is a
Chipotle.
Pizza guru. He's a pizza guru.
And pizza.
Chick-fil-A, Jersey Mike. Those are my go-to.
Wow, Lance, I feel like you're my long-lost brother, man.
Remember I was telling you all the good things that Lance has always been there through the thick and thin for me. He brought something into my life that I didn't even know existed because he got a sweet tooth like no other caddy on the planet out there. He's known for that. Listen, did you know there were vanilla Oreos?
What?
Vanilla Oreos.
No, those don't exist.
Golden Oreo.
The golden Oreo.
Oh, wait a second. Are those the ones that are like that, almost yellow like a khaki color on the outside?
Yes.
Yeah. Yellow painter. Yeah.
Those are hard to find.
They are.
He'll sniff them out.
Double stuff. Got to go double stuff.
Wow. Now, do you dip it in milk or no?
No.
Wow. See, I'm a texture guy. I gotta dip it in there, get it nice and soggy.
Bob, I might dip it in Mountain Dew, but I'm not in milk.
No, he doesn't. It's so funny, but I always make this joke about myself because in my earlier years, I could get after one of my racetrack years, like stay up for 2 or 3 days. I don't need to say anything more than that. No, I always make this joke that when my time comes and I'm laying on that slab and they cut me open, that doctor's going to go, oh my God, nurse, I can't believe he made it this long. Same thing is going to happen for Lance. Mountain Dew, Chipotle, vanilla Oreos. But let's talk about his real passion. He has cornered the market in any Reese's product ever made.
What about Reese's Pieces?
Right? Lance, any product ever made by Reese's.
White chocolate Reese's are my thing.
They make those?
Yes. They're unbelievable.
I'll vouch for him. I poach them all the time from him.
Really?
Yeah.
Like this is a real thing? Like you can
Yeah.
find this in like a grocery market?
Oh, it's legit. They're all over. They're in every Walgreens, CVS, any grocery store.
What
And
does the
most,
packaging look like? I'm
most
gonna test you here.
same, but it has a white Reese's on it.
Wow.
Legit.
You know, hey, Matt,
I am
gotta
a big Reese's fan.
They're legit.
Matt, I got to tell you that when we stay together so much, like we coordinate when we fly in and that kind of stuff. So if I like, here's a hypothetical night, a Sunday night, we both fly into town. I get there first. I check into the hotel. I'm like, Lance, what's your plan? And he's like, well, I'm just landing in 15 minutes. I'm going to pick up the rental car and then I'm going to go get some supplies. So his first move is never to the hotel. It's right to Target. And we're not talking about body wash. That comes the next day for him. We're talking about snacks du jour. I'm getting off the path here. But
No. But because I'm glad you brought that up, that you two just coordinate everything. Did you guys call each other and say, hey, it's red shirt day?
Yeah.
Do you know this?
I own one shirt
Wait, is that
is the color red.
And
Look
it's
at
the
mine.
U.S. Open.
Yes.
But hang on. So Lance, your U.S. Open, I want to say because of the squirrel, is Oak Hill, and Bobby.
No. They're both the country
Wait,
club.
they gave the squirrel to the country club? Oh, that's wrong.
I think the country club had the squirrel first, and if I'm not mistaken, doesn't Oakmont have something like this too, Lance?
I thought it was Oak Hill.
Oak Hill has
Am I
it.
wrong?
No,
Because
they
they
do.
have a lot of acorns that come down.
Yeah.
Another thing we coordinate at majors is our merchandise tent shopping.
Yeah.
We do that together.
There you go.
Two or three times
Folks,
a week.
I don't know where else that you can get this scoop.
Yeah. It's so funny. We both say the same thing. Okay, we're going to go in and get a couple t-shirts for the kids. And the next thing I know, he's texting me from the belt section. Bob, did you see these belts over here? Get back over here.
Since we are talking about merch for a second, Bobby, that hat.
Look at that.
My
Lance
God,
is that
Lance. Just sexy? So, Lance, that is a pull hook golf hat by Branded Bills. There is a leather patch on the front of that bad boy.
What?
And Bobby, show the side because the side has little perforations to it.
Okay, now everybody's going to see how bald.
No. You don't have to do that. You can just turn your head. Oh, see how there's little perforations to it? So, like, this company's out here in Arizona, and it keeps you very cool and fresh throughout the entire year.
Right.
You know, I was going to keep
Branded
wearing
Bills
this.
is good.
Yeah.
That's a good.
I had to mold it for a couple seconds, but usually I got to mold the other one. So this one fits good. And I fell in love with this hat. And then I turned on LIV Golf and saw my enemy, Pat Perez, wearing this builded hat. So now I have mixed emotions.
He wasn't wearing pull hook, though.
No, he was not. That's true. Good point. Lance, your box of these is coming because I told him before we went on.
He already told me, Lance.
Lance is a hat hooker, like most caddies. We're always looking.
I like a good lid.
Yeah, it is good lid. Everybody likes a good
Lance,
lid.
I'm not gonna lie. I almost went for like the premium, which they sell for like over $50. And I looked back at this hat and I go, and this hat sells for like $35. So I'm looking at it and I'm like, I can't imagine a better quality than what this hat is already. And Bobby, now that you have it in person,
right, you nailed it.
They're so nice that I'm just like, you know what? I'm just going to do more of these, and don't worry, Lance. Yeah. We'll connect off air, and I will get you some pull hook golf hats because these things are clean.
Nice.
They really are. Like the logo and everything. Like, yes, I did create the logo, so I'm partial to it. But just looking at it on Bobby from a third party point of view, sometimes you don't know how good something is until you see it on somebody else.
Right. Well, because when you look at yourself, it never looks good, right? That's why it's so funny. Me and Lance have stated we've got some great stories about getting ready in the morning or what we're going to wear and that kind of stuff. And we're each other's mirror. We're our sanding boards. Do you like this, Bob? Do you like that? Does this go with this? Does this go with that?
Oh my God, you guys are work wives.
Hey, it's funny. We had St. Andrews is coming up for the British Open. I'm not going to be there. Lance, you guys are in for sure. David,
we're sixth alternate at the moment.
Wow. Well, I hope it works out. But Matt, quick story.
I'm not in either, so we're all out at this point.
My man's going to go try to qualify for one of those LIV events and pick up one of those big checks that week. So
we're going to get to that in a little bit.
I'm going to tell this quick St. Andrews. I'm going to tell this quick St. Andrews story, talking about our getting dressed and everything like that. But we had. Man, Lance, you remember we had 5 or 6 guys. It was me, Lance, Brett Waldman, who was working for Camillo, Butchie, who was Butchie working for? Brendan Little. Was he working for Weirzy, Mike Weir at the time at St. Andrews?
Maybe he might have still been with Weirzy, yeah.
With Weirzy. We had Billy Spencer, who's with Sung Jae now. He was with
Jason Bone.
He was with Jason Bone at the time. So me and Lance had this.
Bo Van Pelt. I can't remember.
It might have been Bo Van Pelt. But we were,
a lot of camo out of Bo Van Pelt.
Yeah, there was very small accommodations. That the housing over there is very small. So me and Lance always shared the same room. We got these tiny little kid beds, about 6 inches apart from each other. But we would always, our big thing was to like get something cool, right? So if I'm not mistaken, we went to Galvin Green. It's right off the 18th hole or the British Open, the British Open shop. So the British Open is unique for a caddy because it's super light at like 4 a.m, if I'm not mistaken. So it's the only tournament, right, Lance, that'll let caddies walk on the greens.
Yes.
Because there's double greens, some rule. You can walk on the greens beforehand. So our big thing was, we would get out there before everybody. Stevie Williams would be out there all the time. And we'd go walk those pins and fine tune our notes and that kind of stuff. But it's Wednesday night. We had just done damage at the British Open store and at Galvin Green. And it's got to be 3 a.m, right? And I'm sleeping like a baby. And all of a sudden Lance is like, Bobby B, you awake? And I'm like, oh, God, I'm not answering. He's like, Bobby B, you awake? And I'm like, well, I am now. He threw out this line. We always make fun of him. He goes, you ever been wired tired, bro? And I'm like, yeah. He goes, I just can't figure out if I'm going to wear compression gear and a vest and a wool sweater or a jacket. And he just kept going on for like 15 or 20 minutes. The next thing you know, the alarm goes off in like 15 minutes and we're up and at him. And you looked great that day, Lance. You looked
Thanks,
great.
Buddy. Well, it's cold, but yeah, you don't want to be too hot. And I was like, I don't know what my combination is going to be today. I had to run it by Bobby.
You got to run it by. Sometimes you need that third-party approval.
And when you're so tired, but you still can't go to sleep.
Oh, 100%. Happens to me all the time, Lance.
Because you're wired.
Every caddy.
And so it's like, that's why I said that.
Lance, I'll be sitting here talking about our next episode with Bobby, and I can't go to sleep that night. Because I'm so pumped. You were coming on, and I'm like, hang on a second.
Yeah, I got us off the path a little bit. Lance, 10 years with Cooch. What a run. How many wins there, man? How many wins?
Yeah, good call,
7.
Bobby.
10?
7. So we had 6 PGA Tour wins, and then we had a World Cup win with Gary Woodland.
Right.
So that the win's a win. I count it.
Yeah, no, I count it for sure. That's like the Dustin Johnson bunker at Whistling Straits. It counts.
Right.
I never got paid for that. I never got paid for that. That World Cup win, I'm not into slamming other players or anything like that, but that was a big win for you. If I'm not mistaken, did Gary Woodland not buy you and John Yarborough a nice watch as a bonus?
Matt Kuchar did.
Oh, wow. That just totally blew my whole story.
So,
hang on a second.
This is a good story. So Matt did his research. I'll give it to him. He looked at the golf course, looked how long it was. In the time, Gary Woodland was like one of the longest guys on tour, if not the longest. He goes, I need somebody with length, So he asked Gary, and Gary said yes. And so we went, it was 2011, went to China at the Mission Hills Resort over there. And we win it. And we get done. And Gary, he bolted. I don't know if he had to get on a flight or he was leaving, I think. And then John Yarborough, his caddy at the time, went up back up to the room. He and I were staying together. And Matt went at the time, Omega was the title sponsor of the World Cup.
Yep.
And Matt goes, hey, give the bag to this guy. You and I are going, I'm going to get you and John a watch. And I go, you're doing what? And he's like, yeah. He goes, so they had made this makeshift store, literally like an Omega store on the course. And so we got in a golf cart and we went out there and we go in and it's a lot like you were walking into a retail store. Like you didn't think any different. And we walked in. He's like, all right, pick whatever you want for you and you match your watches for you and John. He goes, now just be, no rose gold, no diamond encrusted. I'm like, that's not how I roll anyway, so don't worry about it. So I grabbed his wife and I was like, Sibby, you got to help me pick this out. So we found one and it was really, really good. It was the Planet Ocean with the orange bezel.
Oh, that's nice. I'm a watch guy. So I remember all of those commercials going on at the time too, by the way.
Yeah. So I since have changed out the band to a black rubber band, rubber strap. So it's black with orange stitching
Ooh.
to match the orange bezel. And so I still wear it. I still have it. And that was, so he bought each of us one. And I don't know any idea what kind. I'm sure he got a big discount for buying them. But he won. He and Gary got matching rose gold watches. And I think their wife, or like the time Gary was engaged, Gary's fiance got one, and Sibby, Matt's wife, got one as well.
Matt, I gotta tell you, with my time being lucky with Dustin, that was his big thing too. He knew I liked Gucci watches, or tag watches was my big thing. So when he won his first event,
Tag Monaco.
oh yeah, do you remember the Tiger Woods tag watch that was the golf watch that was kind of square? So when he won his first one, I was like, we were in a shop somewhere, he's starting to make some money, and I'm like, man, I love this watch. He goes, Bob, every time I win, Bob, I'm gonna buy you a watch, right? He goes, but $1,000 maximum. $1,000 maximum.
Oh, $1,000 man! You can't buy a watch for $1,000.
I go, this thing's like $2,800. He goes, okay, Bob, the first one I'm gonna buy you like that. So then it's so funny. Every time he got me that one, which is cool of him. Just any player getting you anything after something good like happens means they care about you, really. They already paid you a bunch of money. That means they cared about you. But every time I was into these $1,000 Gucci watches, every time we go into Gucci, and I'm like, okay, here's the one I want. So Dustin, he would look at it. He's like, Bob, that's $1,400. That's $400 over the budget, Bob.
Oh no!
You won $10 million already. So
he clearly hadn't been with Paulina yet. So
literally,
let's be honest here. I mean, he starts buying a lot more expensive watches. You start to realize that $1,200 is the minimum you can spend on a nice watch. However, now hang on a second, because you start bringing up some good points here, Bobby. I feel like DJ at this point, with how much money that he just made from LIV, and that you led him to the promised land with that. I really think
that's nice of you.
If anybody hears this from DJ's camp and from the LIV Tour side,
right.
Just send Bobby like a nice Rolex, like a $25,000 Rolex would be suitable. I think that'd be just fine. Maybe like a presidential, like something that would be just like monumental for the amount of time that Bobby put in. I mean, Bobby went and lived with this poor guy. Come on. All right. Anyways, I digress.
Yes, that's
you guys can get me on a tangent on watches.
I was gonna finish the watch story. So I get this bundle of, now I have like 6 of them, right? And I'm just rotating. Everybody's like, "Where'd you get that cool watch?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's Gucci." You showed up. It's Gucci before anybody started saying Gucci. And so they would get scratched up or beat up over time. So I'll never forget. I was at home with Lori. We just had our little boy Riker. This is 9 years ago. He's 9 now. And so I'm like, oh, I'm gonna take all these watches down and get them cleaned and everything. So I put them in a little brown paper bag, and I put them in the back seat of our Mercedes. I'm just gonna say that. I put them in the back seat of our Mercedes. Well, I forgot I left them back there. I forgot to run the errand and that kind of stuff. So I jammed out of town for a couple weeks for a couple tournaments. I came back and I'm like, hey, Lore, I had this, I can't find my watches. They were in this brown paper bag and that kind of stuff. The car's brand new, detailed and everything like that. And I'm like, did you see him? And she goes, what was in that bag? And I'm like, oh, those were all my Gucci watches that Dustin bought me, and the tag watch and everything. She goes, oh, Bob, I think I threw them away. And I'm like, what? She's like, yeah. And I could never give her. She's in the next room. I got to whisper. I could never give her shit. And you talk about the Rolex, and Lance was talking about, hey, he's not a big look at me kind of caddy, which we aren't, but we could drop some names on some guys that we would classify as average caddies, who are like, they're ponying up the Rolex, and of course it's the entry level one, and I know that's a great watch and that kind of stuff, but we always giggle about that stuff. But fast forward to me going to like Siwoo and Sungjae, they're Rolex guys, right? And they would be the Koreans just so get off on those.
Oh, you got to be $50K or above on a Rolex.
Oh my gosh!
If you are Asian and you have a Rolex,
yes, one,
you have to make sure it's not fake, and two, they take a lot of pride in the amount of money that goes into it. So it's like, it's either $50K or above. It's either fully 24 karat gold,
right?
Or it's not.
I used to they would show those watches, and I'm like, hey, you got a Rolex deal on your caddy? We work 14 hours a day. I'm standing on the range watching you dig a hole to Korea with divots and everything like that. I'm getting pushed in the
back.
Yeah, and I'm
being told I'm a bad caddy.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, you so bad, caddy. The puppy dog eyes, not one of them ever offered to give anything.
Wow.
I told you, Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, Lance, like
Ah.
you just had this open path to an Omega, which by the way was just playing throughout the Olympics. And I got to the point to where I saw it so much I had to look it up. I'm like, all right, how much is this Omega? Like, what is it gonna cost me? And then they had like the USA one too. Like
Right.
that's what was being broadcasted over here. It was like it was a silver face. I still remember it. It had the little rivets in it, and then it was red and blue. I mean, classy looking watch. So when you got yours, was that the first time Cooch had ever given you something? Because I got a follow up question to this that
Yeah.
I would love answered.
Yes. Yeah. That was the first time that he did something like that for me. And it was 2011. So we'd go, when we get together, 06. It's been 5 years since we've been together. And
That's a long time.
our first win together in 09, the end of 09, fall of 09. So yeah, it was probably the nicest thing he did for me in the years that we were together.
Because you know where I'm going with this. There was an incident in Mexico with this great caddy who, David Ortiz, who shares the name with a famous MLB baseball
Right.
player who's now retired, going to be in the Hall of Fame. And everybody's like, wait, David Ortiz? Yes, it's David Ortiz, but from a Mexico club down there. And man, did shit go sideways on him. And the optics on that one did not look good. Cooch caught out the caddy there for a while until public backlash was a little bit too much and then made it right. What's your take on that? I mean, did you see that one coming? I mean, you guys were long gone. You guys were done by this point. Probably just to put like some context here. You guys were done for like 4 or 5 years at this point. But
Right.
what was kind of your take when you heard that whole thing?
I was disappointed. I mean, I had, caddies are always going to try to protect other caddies, even if it's a local caddy who did a great job and got a win out of it. I don't know what their agreement was. I heard it was lower than,
It was way lower. Like their agreement, even David Ortiz, like, granted, give credit to that caddy, that local caddy, who came out and was just like, yeah, our contract was, 4% if he finished in the top 10. They never talked about if he won ever.
Right.
So it was 4% if you got into the top 10.
So, John Wood, who's now NBC commentator, was Matt's caddy, and Matt was not going to play that week, and John had something planned. And so last minute, Matt decides to go, and John's like, I can't, I've got this thing going, I can't go. And so he called down there, and the tournament director, I think, set him up with David, who I guess L Toucan was his nickname. And so
Love that.
it ended up winning. And, to hear that he only got, I guess, initially 5,000 was what he got.
I think it was less. I think it was 4,500.
I feel like that was an incredible opportunity for good press for Matt. Even if he didn't give him the full 10%, I think he made almost 1.3 million. So even if he didn't give him the full 130,000, which no one really would expect him to do that for a local caddy, but if he gave him 50 grand out of the gate, this never would have been public.
Oh no!
Never.
David Ortiz would be never mind, but David, like this local caddy would be happier than a pig eating shit. Like
It could change his life. His life.
Yeah,
could
it really would.
That's life-changing money for someone in that area of the world. That 5,000 was a lot of money, but 50,000 for them and for him was. I mean, I don't know for a fact was that's setting him up and his family up for a long, long time.
Oh, absolutely.
I think just the opportunity there was missed to really impact David and his family.
Well, I hate to say it, and I hope this doesn't come across the wrong way, but like 5 years in, you get your first gift being a watch that is being sponsored by the tournament. Like, it's like, wow, you've done a lot in that 5-year stretch because you guys had a lot of wins together, had a lot of top 10s and everything. So I don't want to spin this in a negative direction because I don't think that at all of Cooch, but at the same time, it is one of those where it's like, it's a little questionable. Like, maybe it's just like not logical that like the press was going to catch on to that and that like, it was going to become this big, huge negative media parade that took place. Maybe it was like, oh, this will go hush hush and like it'll just go away, but it didn't.
Right. No, it didn't. It just caught fire and just grew and grew and grew until I guess it got to the point where he just had no choice but to make it somewhat right.
Which leads me to ask you, so when you and Cooch were done, we've asked everybody this with any big bag that they've had. Did you sense that it was coming?
No. I was
blindsided.
I had no clue. I remember exactly what I was doing. I was literally in my truck driving to pick up dinner for the family. And I remember we were at the President's Cup in 2015 in Korea. And I was having some really bad neck problems. And he was supposed to go to this Fiji International down in the Fiji Islands, like where I think maybe VJ hosted or something. And it was not for there's really no money in it. And the next week after that, he was going to Mexico to play in this Bridgestone team thing. And there's really wasn't a big person in that. And I said, hey, would you mind if I miss the next 2 weeks? Like my neck, I'm having some problems. Like I need to go get healthy. And I'll just see you at Sea Island was going to be our next event.
Which is home for him.
No, he's like, yeah, no problem. Like, I get it. I'm like, man, I'm just hurting. And I really need to go get fixed. I need some therapy. I need to get right before I get back out. He's like, no problem. No problem at all. So we end up, I go home. He goes and does those two. Well, when he's in Mexico, it's like Tuesday of the Mexico tournament. And I get this phone call and it's from him. And I'm like, oh, maybe he's calling me. Maybe he couldn't find anyone to catch. He's wanting me to fly down there last minute or something. So I get this deal and I answered. I'm literally on the way to pick up. I don't know what I was even getting. It was Jason's Deli or something. I don't know. And so I answered. I'm like, hey, what's up, Cooch? He's like, hey, Lance, how's it going? I'm like, good. And I'm like, just going to get dinner for the family. He's like, hey, he goes, I just think I need to do something different with a caddy starting next year. So I'm going to move on. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, can you tell me why? Because I had no clue this was coming. And he really couldn't give me an answer. He tried to give me, some answer of like, well, I feel like we're on the course and I'm doing something that you may not want me to do, a decision that, whatever, you make too big a deal of it or something. I don't know. I was like, well, no, I don't think that's true. I said, whenever we've had some tweaks in our communication and all it takes is a quick conversation, you and I have fixed it, like that, no big deal. And he's like, yeah, I just think I need to do something different. I'm like, okay. I asked him why and he couldn't really tell me. And so I just left it at that. And that was it. I mean, I never really.
I want to add something to that. So you had mentioned it was John Wood that came behind you, who's working for NBC, and I think everybody needs to know that when we would get houses for the majors at the British or at the PGA or something like that, we had a group, right? Me, Lance, John Wood, Bones, LaCava.
Right.
Sometimes Joe Scover and Ricky Fowler's caddy. Greller was just coming into the scene with Jordan Spieth. He would stay with us and that kind of stuff. I guess my question and obviously we're still very close with John Wood and that kind of stuff. Were you like, man, John, my friend, was there any resentment? Is that the word? Were you surprised that it was John because he was a friend or anything like that? Or did you take it like, okay, that's fine. It's a business decision. I get it.
I knew that he had been unhappy with Hunter because he and I had talked about it.
Yeah.
It was just not, he had gone through some stuff with Hunter and wasn't happy with a few things.
Who's Hunter?
Hunter Mahan, who's John Wood worked forever.
I got you. Okay. Gotcha.
Hunter Mahan, who, when he was at his best, John Wood was with him and had every win with John. And John's a phenomenal caddy, one of the best we had.
Phenomenal.
And he and I had become good friends. And, I knew he had been unhappy with Hunter and was possibly looking to make a change. So when Matt's Matt's bag became available, it didn't surprise me.
Right.
I thought he possibly go work for Bill Haas because he worked for Bill at the 2015 President's Cup for 1 week, but he didn't do it. He got offered the job and turned it down, and then he took the Matt Kuchar job, and he called me right away, and we talked about it. And I had never had. I mean, we had some people mention to me, "Hey, do you think there was anything going on there?" I'm like, "Nah, I don't think so."
There's no flirting behind the scenes.
I don't see John being that way.
Yeah.
Some people may not agree with me on that, but I personally just never felt. You can feel when someone's being a little awkward. And
when somebody's shady, you can just like sense it from them. You're like, hang on a second, something's not right here. You get it in your gut.
He wasn't. He wasn't one bit.
So basically, like you were talking about, like with Lorena and David Booker, where like you knew something was, maybe Matt.
Well, she told me when she let me go. She told me. She said. Because she had offered him the job before I got it. He turned it down because he was with Grace Park, who was really good at the time.
Right.
They had won a major together at, in Palm Springs, and she hurt her back and was going to miss like a year. And he went running to Lorena, sent her an email every week for 3 months.
Yeah.
And Lorena told me this coming from her mouth, so I know it's true. And she's like, yeah, I just, came into a good impression of Lorena. But she was like, yeah, I'm going to, give David a try. And I said, well, you're going to do what you want to do. And I can't thank you enough for the opportunity you've given me. We had a lot of success together. I'm a little surprised you're doing this, but I respect you so much that I can't even be mad about this. I said, but just be careful who you're working with here, because he's not on the up and up. And I get you coming from me. It doesn't mean anything right now because I'm losing my job, but I'm just telling you, he's not what you think he is.
And then you see future results.
And then he may be a good caddy, and he clearly he's gotten a lot of results out there. With, they went on to win 20-something times together, and they won their first week together. And I told her, I said, "You're going to win next week in Ohio. I know you are." At the Wendy's tournament at Tartan Field, right by Muirfield Village, I said, "I know you're going to win. You're due. You're ready to win again." And they did. And we stayed friends, and I've seen her occasionally at like the tournaments we have in Mexico, or occasional she'll pop up doing a publicity thing. And she's great. I always tell people she's a better human being than she was a golfer, and she was a phenomenal golfer.
Wow, that's a mouthful. That's a mouthful. Matt, does this sound very, Lance? It's funny how we were talking about Scotty McGinnis was on the show last week, and we asked him the same questions, when it was coming to an end with Scotty Scheffler, and he was very adamant because, they were paired when things started going south. Even though he's making $3 or $4 million a year, he just hadn't won yet, right? With Scotty McGinnis.
Right.
When things were going south in New Orleans, their partner was Bubba Watson and Teddy. Do you remember, Matt, that Scotty McGinnis told us, he's like, man, I told everybody that Ted, and I'm not talking shit about Teddy because Teddy's a great guy and that kind of stuff, but it's funny, but Scotty told us he sensed it. He's like, man, if I ever lose this bag, Teddy is so up on my guy right now that I'm going to lose him to Teddy. And I'm glad to hear you didn't have that experience.
Same here, because Teddy was definitely flirting.
Yeah, he was flirting.
It's like relationships. I mean, it really is. It kind of comes down to where it's like, oh man, like if I was ever on your bag, it's like, what? Why are you saying that to my player right now?
Right.
But it's that dynamic to where like you guys are a team. You're a team, and at the end of the day, it's like. Some can tell that it's coming. Like Bobby, for you kind of knew that.
I had no idea.
You ended it the first time, and then the second time you didn't see it coming.
I got pissed off at him for 60 days or whatever. That was a different thing. But
that's a different thing. That's just a tizzy.
When my little boy was sick and I didn't go over to, I was blindsided, and I think it's not just that I was blindsided. But I have said it before. There were two things. I lived with the guy for 6 years. How do I say this? How do I say this? Because it'll all be in my book. I've said that a million times. But I was hurt because I lived with him for 6 years. I had a little boy that was going through some surgery and that kind of stuff. And I'll tell you what, I was fucking pissed off that he had some guy call me and he didn't have the sack to call me himself. So
it was bad timing.
I was blindsided. He did give me a big ass severance and that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Which is, I mean,
That's why I'm saying a $50,000
Along-
Rolex. Did I up that, by the way? Did I double that just now? Dustin, if you're hearing
Along
this.
with the NDA, you had to sign.
Yeah.
What's that?
So exactly, Lance. That's exactly right.
I tricked him on that. I called my attorney right when they put that in front of my face, and I totally tricked
Bobby
him
never signed it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
On the record, Bobby never signed an NDA, which
I
is
got
why
him.
we're just waiting for a period of time to go by. But anyways, DJ, if you're hearing this, $50K Rolex for good old Bobby, because as I realized earlier in the episode, the Asians don't think anything of a $25,000 Rolex. So make
Right.
sure it's 50, so at
Right.
least it meets the criteria of being a nice
Right.
watch, right? One of the
Right.
presidential ones or something like that. I mean, Lance already got his Omega from Cooch. So
Yeah.
Lance, you're doing all right? You don't need any shout outs from me right now to
No.
get any more watches? Okay.
No, I'm good.
Hey,
Not
Hey,
from Lorena or anybody else?
No,
yeah.
Okay.
Nope.
Lance, I want to back up a little. Players Championship, right? You guys won the Players. Cooch won the Players. Biggest win of your career for sure, right?
yeah,
Monetarily speaking.
Was that
yeah.
the most memorable experience? Winning?
yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
had to be, right?
I mean, that was a good one. The playoff event at Ridgewood, what used to be the Barclays,
Yeah.
you know, at Ridgewood, New Jersey, was a big one. It was a playoff, and that was a big one. That was the biggest one till then. And but then the Players by far. I have some great memories of that week. And I remember that was the week that, if you remember, Kevin Na, that was when he got the yips for the driver and he couldn't draw it back. Remember? And he was leading or close to
It was
leading.
hard to watch.
And we were maybe tied with him, I think, going to the final round, and we were in the final group. And I knew right away that he had no chance, because he was so worried about getting in Matt's way with what he was doing. He was completely out of his game and had no shot.
Wow.
And I'll never forget it. I would tell the story. Bobby will appreciate it. So we remember we had a 2-shot lead going to 16 at par 5. We hit it down there, couldn't go for it, laid it up, hit a wedge in there to like 12 feet, and he makes it to get a 3-shot lead. And at the time, the Sky Sports, where they did their studio, was up back left of 16 green when you walked around the corner to go to 17. And it was all glass, rounded glass. And I remember I put the flag in, we're walking off, 3-shot lead going, and I look up and there's Butch Harmon in the window.
Oh, wow.
And I had always had a really good, strong relationship with Butch and got along so well with him. And he was always so kind to me. And I just remember, sometimes I get choked up even thinking about it. Someone of that stature walking off the green, and he just, gave me a tip of the cap.
Nice. Classic.
That's class.
So much respect. I was like, I just smiled at him. He just gave me a tip of the cap, and I just went on my way. And
That's so Butch. That's such a Butch move right there. For anybody that knows.
Absolutely. And I remember we get up the next hole, and Matt's like, we're in between clubs, and I'm like,
Oh, boy.
either pitching wedge or a gap wedge. And I said, dude, you can't hit a chippy pitching wedge here. You just got to hit this gap wedge as hard as you can, hit it in the middle of the green. And he did, and it didn't make it up top. It came down to the bottom. So he's going to putt up and over and around over that thing. And he hit a really good putt to like 4 feet, and we missed it to go. Now we only have a 2-shot lead going to the final hole. And we're walking off the green there at 17. I put the flag, and he was, Lance, man, I really want to make that. I go, well, I mean, of course. But why? And he's like, I want to hit 5 iron off the next tee. I'm like, we're hitting hybrid off this next tee. It's pumping downwind. It's a perfect hybrid for you. I mean, you can't go through on the right. He's like, all right. I think I settled. I mean, we literally hit hybrid down there, and it was pumping down off the right, and he just hammers this hybrid down there, and we're walking off the tee, and I'm thinking, I got to think of something to talk to him about. So I start talking about the NHL playoffs. This was when the Players was in May, and it was right at the end of the season, and right to finish the start. It was in the playoffs, right? And he knew nothing about hockey and didn't watch hockey. So I tell him this joke, which I can't remember. I tell him this joke, and I'm talking about the playoffs, which he had no clue and didn't care. But I was trying to distract him with a 2-shot walking up 18. And
that's such a veteran caddy maneuver right there under pressure.
we get up there and we
It
hit
really
this.
is.
I mean, I'm like, dude, just hammer 6-iron. That's what we're doing. We're hitting 6-iron in the middle of the green. This is about when they used the back left pin, not before they used the front left. Used the back left pin, and ripping downwind on the Bermuda greens, and he just, hit 6-iron right in the middle of the green to 40 feet, 2-putt win.
Game
And
over.
That's all you got to do.
I'll never forget. I saw the replay, and Johnny Miller I guess the microphone was close to us walking off the tee, and he heard me talking about hockey and telling the joke, and he gave me some serious props for doing that. And he was like saying, "Well, you just said it's a veteran move. You got to get him distracted, blah blah blah." And I ended up seeing Johnny at a tournament later down the road, and I went over to him and thanked him for that. It's always nice to hear that kind of stuff as a caddy from a name commentator or a name whomever that can tell you, hey, you did a great job there.
I got a question, Lance. I got a question. Sorry to interrupt, man. I got a quick question for you because I love asking all my veteran caddy friends this thing because I know my answer. Lance, if you're in contention or even if you're not in contention, do you ever get any nerves or butterflies before the first tee shot or the 10th tee shot or anything like that? I mean, can you elaborate on that? Do you get those? Do you get those feelings at all? Is it more of like, I'm a little nervous, but once you get the first shot going and it gets airborne, you kind of get into your comfort zone? Elaborate on that a little, your personal feelings.
I think you do when you first get in those situations.
Yeah.
But once you get into them quite a bit, then you get used to and know how to handle it.
Yeah.
And I'll say when we got into contention at Valspar, I got a little bit of that because I just hadn't been there in a while.
Yeah. You're talking about this. You're talking about this year with Davis Riley, your new guy. Yeah. Okay. Great.
I remember 4 years ago, 2018 in the fall at Sea Island with Patrick Rogers. We shoot 61, 62 on the weekend to make the cut on the number. Shoot 61, 62 to get in a playoff with Charles Howell. And I remember at Sea Island, we're on that 14th hole, the par 4 down along the water on the backside there.
Yeah. Good hole.
And hit like a driver 9-iron to like 5 feet and made birdie to take a 1-shot lead. I remember looking over at the scoreboard and saw we were 1 up. And I was like, all right, I got to do something. This kid, he's never been here. He needs to, So with the flag in, I just started kind of like slowly walking and I just started whistling a little bit. Like,
just to calm him down.
I just looked at him and I go, just go walk in the park, buddy. We're just having fun on Sunday.
Nice.
That calmed him down a little bit. We had driver 4 and birdie the next hole. And then he started tightening up a little bit. And I'm like, hey, we're good. And I remember playing with Zach Johnson. And he and Patrick share the same agent. And we get to 17, the par 3, and I think we got a 1-shot lead, and maybe we're tied. I think we don't have a 1-shot lead, and we hit a really good shot in there. And I remember we hit 8-iron, and I remember Zach coming, and I've been pretty close to Zach, and he comes back to the bag to look to see what we hit to make sure we're hitting the right glove because he wanted us to win, because he couldn't win. He played very good that day, and he's like comes back, looks at the bag, and he's like, okay. He's like, yeah, like, all right, good club.
Class act.
Yeah, and we missed the putt, but then we birdied 18 to post a number, and we went to the range and had to wait, and we ended up losing. But I just remember getting this really long text from Patrick after we were done, going, "Man, I can't tell you how good you were down the stretch. That was some good stuff. You weren't nervous. I could feel your energy. It was great. You were calm the whole time, and that really helped me." Because players feel caddy's energy for sure. Like if you're nervous, you got too much coffee or whatever, you're shaking, you're nervous, right? You can't get a word out, right? But when you're just like calm as can be, like they can sense that. They know.
Right. 100%. So great run with Cooch comes to an end, a little bit of time with Patrick Rogers. And then there was a period like for most guys where it's probably a hard transition because you come from a big time bag. And I'm just going to say it, at that point, you're kind of a big time caddy, right? You're hanging out with all the other big time caddies. Well, you would never accept it. And I never would too, but
I wouldn't say that, but yeah.
Yeah. But well, you're 6'3", so I mean, you're big time.
Will you guys take top 15?
What's that?
Top 15 caddies right now?
I mean, I think the best.
Me?
Both of you.
Of all time?
No. Just right now. For the caddies that are out there.
I wouldn't even answer that because you know who the best cat, Matt, you know who the best caddy is to me every week? It changes every Sunday.
Really?
To me. Well, yeah, it does. You know, now I'm not going to say Aaron Fleener's a top 15 caddy.
Yeah, but there's got to be consistency, Bobby.
Yeah. Well, I think when he goes through his run with Kuchar, he's probably top 10 caddy, right?
Well, I would say when you got, I think a sign of a good caddy is a guy that can do it with multiple players and not just one guy.
Right.
Like, can you think that, you know, and I mean, just without naming names, do you think some of these guys that have been with players for a while and have a lot of success with one player, could they do other players? Like, I haven't won since Cooch, but I've been in playoffs with Bill Rogers and Davis Riley and come up on the losing end with those, but it's been very close. You know,
you know what? I agree with that 100%. That is a great point. And I think he's spot on that, whether the guys win with you or not. But you can look at caddies like you look at players on the racing form, right? When you make a move to a different player, if that player starts playing better than he had before, right? And I think I've been in that situation where I've had players where I get them, and I'm not saying I'm super caddy or anything like that, but you're like, you know, as a caddy, you know, you're like, well, this guy's playing better with me, and then you make a move to another guy. Like
you feel like you've made a difference.
Yeah, and it's a great feeling. It's the money's great. Obviously, we know it's. I mean, I don't want to say it, but it is really about making a nice living for your family and that kind of stuff. But
that's
it is
the end goal. I mean, Bobby, there's nothing to be ashamed of with that.
For sure, no,
100%.
For sure. But I'm modest. I try and be modest when it comes to that stuff.
Well, don't worry. I'll be the non-modest part of you. Okay,
good. Good. You have my back on the Riviera.
Yeah, that's why I went for the Rolex, the 50 grand.
Yeah. So, Lance, after Cooch, you go through some different players. I know us being friends and that kind of stuff, and you know I'm close with a lot of agents and players, and I'm friends with a bunch, and we talked a little bit, and you know, probably got you a little bit connected with Doug Gim when he first came out.
Dougie Gim.
Yeah, he did a little time with Doug Gim. I've been pretty close with Keegan Bradley for a long time, and helped you, you know, to move to Keegan. You worked for Berger for a while, man. You've worked with some good players, huh, man? You worked for Berger for a while, too, and then here we are with Davis Riley, and I'm just going to clue everybody in on this Davis Riley. So if people don't know, my oldest son, Daniel, caddies on the Korn Ferry Tour, and he worked for Davis for 2 years. And Daniel's been so fortunate. And I will back up and I'll say this: Lance has been like an older brother to Daniel for a long, long time.
I'm like a good uncle.
Yeah. You got to make up for the bad dad. he's a good uncle.
For Daniel.
Yeah. So he's I'm going to say you're like an older brother. It's funny when the whole Whistling Straits went down, for the people that don't know, with the Dustin Bunker incident. Well, Cooch was in contention there. We stayed. It's so funny. Do you remember? We stayed in a room together. My son Daniel was all of 12 years old, 11 or 12 years old at that time.
On the rollaway cot. Yeah.
He was on the rollaway cot. And listen to this, Matt. It was so funny. Matt, Lance would crack up every night because my nickname for a long time was room service, right? Because I never fucking left the room ever. I would always order room service.
Sound like me,
and Lance is like, Daniel, what are you going to order? And Daniel's like, well, I'm going to have the filet, right? Do you remember that, Lance?
You got so mad at him. He ordered filet every night, and you got so angry with it.
It's $60 a pop. $60 a pop. He's ordering filet every night. But I got another funny story. Was Daniel was a big young golfer, wanted to play golf, and he would go. Do you remember the one night he went and played golf with Sergio's dad, with Victor out at what was it? Not Pumpkin Ridge. What's the other course there? There's another epic course in Kohler where they've had USG events.
Wolf Run or Wolf something.
Black Wolf Run. Black Wolf Run. So we would drive to the golf course with us, man, and then he'd go on his merry way. He would like play golf with Sabatini's caddy, and then he started to get to know Victor Garcia, Sergio's dad, pretty good. So one night, I wouldn't say it was after Thursday or Friday's round, Lance. I don't know if you remember this or not, but it got to like 5 o'clock. Me and Lance are back, and Dan was like, Dad, I'll get a ride back. Don't worry about me. And I'm like, well, you're fucking 11, so I'm going to worry about you a little bit. So 6 o'clock rolls around. He's not there. 7 o'clock rolls around. Lance looks at me and goes, hey, Bobby B, where do you think the kid is? And I'm like, I don't know. 5 minutes later, he comes through the door, and I'm like, and I'm pissed as a dad. I'm like, hey, Dan, no phone call or anything like that? Who the hell brought you home? And he goes, Sergio dropped me off, Dad. I'm like, who? He's like, Sergio. And I'm like, Sergio? He's like, yeah, Sergio. So I don't know why I'm sharing that story, but I have these memories, and I'm getting off track with my son,
No,
Daniel.
you're
So
good
anyway,
because it obviously led to him being a great caddy himself.
well, he's been fortunate. He was on Sungjae's bag when Sungjae first came over, and he won with him. He was fortunate enough to get hooked up with Davis Riley. Had 2 wins with Davis Riley. We all know the great thing that happened to Daniel 2 weeks ago with Pierce. Now he's got Pearson Cootie, and they got a win a couple weeks ago too. So that looks like they're close to getting their card. But I wanted to back everybody else because this Davis Riley is like a freak talent. And Daniel, when Daniel got the bag, he told me like after a couple weeks, he's like, Dad, here, I got so lucky again. This is a freak talent. And I think some of these younger players and that kind of stuff, they enjoy having a young caddy with them because there's more to talk to in between shots. They're on the same level. They're into the same music, blah, blah, this and blah, blah, that. But I think and Daniel will verify this, and I'm sure Lance will verify this too, that it gets to the point when you go on a 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 week stretch when they're not, well, bottom line is they're not playing good, whether it's the caddies deal or not. I think they lose a little respect. Would you agree for a younger caddy, Lance? Is that safe to say? You know, they lose a little respect.
May not be as mature and handling things the right way, and they tend to jump the gun a little bit, and
right. And so
I can see that.
Yeah, and so I'm going to share a little funny story because it's all over with now, and we've already talked about it before the show and everything like that. So Lance is pretty much like my closest guy out there, caddy wise, and a couple other guys. So Lance called me, and Daniel had been calling me for a while, and this is just to share with people how the breakups go and that kind of stuff, and how the word gets out and rumors. And there was an irrelevant caddy that was telling Daniel for a few weeks, is like, hey man, you're getting shopped, you're going to lose this bag, and that kind of stuff. And Dan would call me all upset every week, and I'm like, Dan, let me just tell you something. I've been caddying out here for a long time. I fucking know everybody. If something was coming to an end, I would have been the first one to hear about it. So just put your head down and fucking keep working hard, and whatever happens, what happens. And we'll fast forward to a Hartford tournament. What was last year, Lance? Or last year. And I'm walking through the parking lot, and Lance goes, hey, Bobby, I got to talk to you for a second. I'm like, oh, okay, what's up? He's like, man, I got the fucking Davis Riley call last night, man. And and I didn't sleep last night, and I don't know what to do because it's Daniel and it's you, and I'm struggling with this, man. And I got to be honest with you, Bob, I'm thinking about doing it because this is a big time talent, but I just, say something to me, Bob, and that kind of stuff. And I was bent. I was like a little bit upset, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, well, Daniel's done, right? It's official now because they just reached out to Lance and that kind of stuff. So tell me about, was it tough for you, Lance, because he was my son and that kind of stuff? Did you 100%. Have to think about it for a while? And
100% was.
Yeah. Okay.
When I got the phone call, and I remember I saw you, I remember exactly where it was. I'd be landing right for it. And what I said was, I remember this. I said, hey, what's going on with Daniel and Davis? And you were like, they call you. And I said, yes, they did. Because I was going to be straight up front and honest with you right away.
Right.
I'm like, yeah, I got the call. And then I remember I was talking, and you were like, are you going to take it? I go, well, I'm thinking about it, but I don't know.
Defensive dad.
Fair play on both of you, by the way.
From what I'm hearing, he's gonna lose his job regardless.
Yeah.
And wouldn't you rather one of your friends get it than someone you don't like?
Right.
And he's like, all right. And I don't have it really registered with him right then, but it was a couple weeks, and we talked about it a little bit, and I talked to Daniel, and I told Bobby this. I texted Bobby after I saw Daniel the first time. I said, your son handled this with the
I do remember you saying that. I do remember that text.
Utmost class. It was very impressive with someone as young as Daniel was to handle it as professionally and as classy as he did. And he came right away and hugged me and was like, so happy you got the job, dude. Like, you have a family, and man, I knew it was coming to an end anyways. And he needed someone new. I needed someone new, man. We're good. And I was like, can you tell your dad that?
Yeah, so Matt, it's what he's referencing is what we talked about, Matt, because when Lance took the job, I'm like, that motherfucker, it's Daniel. I was so
you were in dad mode.
Well, I was totally in dad mode. And I
would have been the same way.
Yeah.
And and Lance, me and Lance have talked about it since then. You know what I mean? And Lance is like, of course you were supposed to be upset, you know, but he was going to lose the job. It was a big opportunity, and it took a long time for Matt for that to resonate because Daniel's my son, and and I have two other little boys, but Daniel's my guy, right? He's my oldest son. You know, he's
He's in the
just the
same
best kid. He's
profession.
never
I
done.
mean,
I've done stupid shit in my life, and this kid has never done anything bad. And I almost again want to give myself a pat on the back because all the mistakes that I've made growing up and through my adult life, I have tried to pass on to him. You know, don't do it the way I did it, because I've been in the situations before where I pick up the phone and I call that agent and I'm like, fuck you, you know, you're gonna fuck you and fuck everybody in that office because you just lost the best caddy, blah blah blah. But I will say this, it took a little while, but Lance had the huevos. This is how much Lance believed in Davis Riley. Lance never been down to the Corn Ferry Tour ever in his life, never had to, but he realized the talent with this guy, and he's like, I'm fucking going down and then I'm coming back up and I'll just deal with, you know, I'm not making a ton of money, even though this kid could live. And so I still wasn't talking to Lance. It went on for a while. And Daniel sent me this picture of Lance and Daniel on the range. And Daniel had typed in and he's like, Dad, it's time to get over it. Lance has kids. I'm good with it. You should be good with it. And we have rekindled our romance ever since then. But I guess part of my story was how I would have reacted. But now I'm older and I'm a lot more mellow and I know how the game works. And the first thing I told Daniel, I go, hey, listen, this guy's agent is Mike Chisholm, okay? And he is part of the Lynn Roach group with Alan Hobbs. And that is Fred Couples, and that is, you can just down the list, Zalatoris, Davis Riley, and there's Thigala, and there's more coming. And I told Dan, I go, Dan, do not get confrontational with this agent. You take it in stride and you pick up the phone or you call him or you text him and you go, hey man, I just want to tell you, thanks so much for the 2 years with David and the experience. He made me some money. He's establishing me on the, you know, on the caddy map more than I would have been before. Cause he kind of caught lightning in a bottle with Sungjae, just a little 5-week thing. And he did the right thing. And you know how he did the right thing is because this same agent, Mike Chisholm, signed Pearson Coody. And when Pearson Coody turned after Nationals, who do you think Mike Chisholm called out of his Rolodex? He could have fucking called anybody for this kind of talent, but he calls Daniel. He calls Daniel, right? And if I'm not mistaken, Lance probably knew this was happening before I even did, because I know Lance is super tight with Chisholm. I know Lance is close with his friends and close with the Coody family and that kind of stuff. And I was just so proud as a parent. You think this bad tragic thing happens to your son, and I'm not talking like a family tragedy, but just like you feel for your son so much, and it's like, oh my God, he took my advice, and look how it's worked out, where he's right back with more experience, a couple years under his belt. And we all know, it's funny, I'm joking with Daniel now because Steven Yeager is the most all-time winning player on the Corn Ferry Tour / whatever tours it was before. And so now I tell Dan all the time, I go, you're the fucking Steven Yeager of fucking caddies out there. You won 4 times in 4 years. That's fucking unheard of. Because it's so, and Lance will tell you, it's fucking harder. Well, I'm going to make this. I've made this comment before. Lance, don't you agree? It's harder to get to the PGA Tour off the Corn Ferry Tour than it is to stay on the PGA Tour, right? Because you got to fucking shoot 20-something under every week, and there's so much, and there's so much talent. Yeah. Then there's so much talent. You know, we were talking about other caddies. So me and Lance are good on this whole thing. We got to talk about Davis Riley a little bit, Lance, because
I want to find out. I want to find out. What was it, Lance, that you did see in Davis Riley to where you're like, shit, I might lose a friend over this?
Well, no, I knew that wouldn't happen, but I knew how good Davis was because I was good friends with his instructor, Jeff Smith. And I've known Mike Chisholm, his agent, for a long time. And so Jeff would always, when I worked for Patrick Rogers, who Jeff Smith worked with, or still does work with, I would just always hear about this Davis Riley kid. And I'm like, and then I knew Daniel was working for him. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then he had all my favorites list because I got Daniel. Whoever Daniel was working for is on my favorites list. And so I'm, texting Daniel when he had a good week, and I'm hearing all these great things from Jeff Smith about how good this young kid is, right? So I already knew about him. And so when the call came and they were like, are you interested? And I was like, well, and I said, yes, and I did say, the thing is, Daniel's a good friend. I've known him since he was a kid, and his dad's one of my best friends. And I said, does Daniel know? How is this going down? Like what, I'm not going to do this if it's done in a bad way. And so, anyway, so I just was through word of mouth, very impressed with how good, and he had won twice in 2020 and hadn't played, probably been unmotivated, and because of COVID, and he did get to graduate up in 2021, so he had to do another year down there. Some guys can get, they're like, just kind of feel like I should be up there already, and
Sure.
all that. So, I just knew how good he was, and I was working for Scott Harrington at the time, who wasn't playing that great, but I mean, phenomenal guy, loved working for him. Really good talent, just wasn't putting it together. And, I figured this was probably a good move for me. And, talked to Bobby and, talked to Daniel and just made sure it was all done on the up and up. And then, accepted the job. And it took a little while to get going. And, I recognized right away the first session with him at his, he lives in Dallas here as well, near me. And so I went up to his club, Merido, and spent like 2 or 3 days on the range with him and on the golf course. And I was day one, I was impressed. I was impressed with how efficient his practice was and how detail oriented he was in everything he did. There was no wasted time. And there's a lot of guys on tour that waste time and they don't practice efficiently. And so I was very impressed from day one. And then, it took us a while to have some good tournaments, but, we finally got the ball rolling at New Orleans with Will Zalatoris as our partner. Missed the cut by a mile at Hilton Head.
Yeah,
and
we haven't missed
the cut since. And he had 6 straight top 15s. And only 2 of those were outside the top 10. And then that's not even including the second place finish at Valspar.
Yeah,
so
you got the Valspar behind me here at Innisbrook. What
Yeah.
hole is this again?
13.
13?
Right before the par 5. Best par 3 on the golf course for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Hey, Lance, let me ask you this straight up. Special talent? Like special talent, this guy?
Yes.
Special talent, right? Could be any kind of player, right?
Top 10 in the world. Yeah, he's top 5 in the world. He can do that. There's no question.
I mean, a lot of the guys have talked very highly of him. His peers say, this kid's going to win. It's just a matter of when. Now,
he might have the prettiest move on tour.
His swing is gorgeous. Which
world.
leads me to ask you, Lance, what is it that he needs to overcome in order to get to that next level? Because his next level is winning all the time and kind of that Justin Thomas, Jordan Spieth level. Well, Jordan Spieth back in the day. That's where I see him, at least in the near future. As long as, and I'm just curious, is there something that you see that you're like, man, if we could knock this out, we would be absolute money in there?
You can be careful. You can be careful the way you answer this too. You know what I mean? You don't have to be specific on it. Putting. No, I know it's not chipping because he's sick chipper.
Well, I was gonna say stats would say his strokes gained around the green would be where he needs the most improvement. Even though I don't necessarily agree with that.
Wow. So bunker is actually the worst.
The last 6 months or 4 months or so, his short game has really risen to a really good level. His putting has been off the charts. His driving is elite, and his stroke gain approach the last several months has been really, really good. And so I would maybe say if he had to work on an area of his game technique-wise, it would be more of the short game.
The only reason I asked you that, too, because it's a very loaded question. That's why Bobby jumped in, too, because it's yes, it's a very loaded question, but for somebody like himself, he's got such a good move that it's not incredible. The golf swing.
I would say that, I think he's grown mentally. His mental strength has grown so much since I first started working with him. He's a very fiery individual, which I love. He's got some fire to him, which means he's competitive, which means he wants to win. So that's a good thing. And I think just being young and first year on tour, and it's all about handling certain situations and
he's starting over again, right? He's basically starting
grown.
over again.
He's grown so much, and he's getting better and better and better every week. It seems like he's been working with a sports psychologist, a pretty well-known guy, Brett McCabe, who works at the University of Alabama, the Alabama football team and the golf team, and they've rekindled some time when we used to work together when he was in college, and he started working with him last fall, and he's really made some major steps and improvements in that area. And it's only a matter, like, it's not if, it's when. It's only a matter of time before he reels off. And I feel like he's one of these guys too. He's that good where if he wins once,
right,
the floodgates open.
David Duval, yeah, like, it took him a while to knock on the door, and then he finally won, and then he just rattled off a bunch of them. Right. So I feel like he has that type. He's not a guy that's going to win once and run away and hide. I think he's going to win once, and then they may not come as quickly as the run Scotty Scheffler was on this year, but I think it's going to be steady and improving. I think every year he's going to keep taking steps.
Lance, I couldn't agree with you more, and I'm not on his bag.
Matt, Matt and Lance, you know what I keep envisioning is everybody knows, for those who don't know, him and Will Zalatoris are best friends. But can you imagine when these guys both pop, can you imagine these two teaming up in future Ryder Cups and President's Cups? I think the President's Cup will be tougher for them to win now than Ryder Cups because there's so much international talent. But I think about that. I find myself daydreaming about that quite a lot. I'm like, fucking Will Zalatoris and Davis Riley. American golf is in, Scotty Scheffler. American golf is in a good spot right now. I mean, that was like a conservative thing. Lance, one quick question before we die. We always want to get our guest take on the LIV Golf, and that's actually a good entry into the LIV Golf for sure. But let's talk about.
I got to put the kids down to bed, but yeah, let's get into this.
Okay. Let's. Well, then, what I was going to ask you. Let's scratch what I was going to ask you. Let's get into this LIV Golf thing because Matt, I'm going to confess, I couldn't take it anymore. I watched it on Sunday.
I know
watched it.
So I was texting Bobby Lance.
The announcers are horrible.
But if I may, it is a guilty pleasure to where it's like watching a train wreck, but then it is. I'll say this. I have defended LIV from an existence standpoint. I didn't love the fact that the PGA fought them and kind of built this rhetoric around them that they were evil. That I disagreed with. I just disagreed with everything that Jay did kind of leading up and from the players meeting only at Riv through. I'll leave that at that. But when I started watching it and I'm like, well, one, it's on YouTube. I'm like, okay, so I got to pop up YouTube on my smart TV. A lot of people don't have a smart TV, but a lot of people do at this point. So I pop it up, and then I start watching these or listening to the announcers. And I was texting Bobby. I go, Bobby, I think I have a guilty pleasure, man. And he's like, what is it? I go, there's these two English announcers, and there's one American announcer. And I'm not going to say what you told me next, Bobby, but I go, these guys could be a couple of the most arrogant guys I've ever heard on air, and they're constantly one-upping each other to where it's almost comical. Like, it's almost like...
Right.
But then I'm watching, and I hate to even admit this, but my guilty pleasure led me to watching it in bed with my fiance.
Interesting.
And she loved it. She's not a golf person, hates watching regular golf, and she's like, this is interesting. I go, why? She goes, because it's shot after shot, and she's like, from what you told me, she's like, now I hear these guys just like disagreeing with each other constantly. And it is true, but I also go, well, what else is it? She goes, they look like they're having fun.
Right.
Like,
well, it's a fucking exhibition. They are having fun. Lance, I know you got to put the kids to bed and everything like that. Can you give us a few minutes of what your take is on LIV Golf?
Yeah. I'm pretty indifferent on it. There's days where I'm like, no, I'm all about the PGA Tour, blah, blah, blah. And then there's days where I'm like, all right, guys, I can see that, why this is going on. And I don't fault any of the guys for going. I just look at it as, I'm kind of glad it came about because it's a new product that has pushed the PGA Tour to make changes, and it's only going to help us down the road because all these purse increases are going up, everything's going up, which is going to help all of us. It'll be a great time to be a caddy on the PGA Tour. But where I'm kind of like not sure about it is the the validity of it for a long-term business deal. Like, is it going to, at any point, the Saudi government who's backing this thing could say, yeah, all right, we're done. And they pull the funding and it just is done. And it doesn't exist anymore. Right.
Right.
And to me, it's been basically it's a vendetta that I feel that Greg Norman has had against PGA Tour for as long.
You're spot on. I'm so glad you said it.
28 years from 1994 when he started this whole world golf
idea,
league, whatever he called it, and he found somebody to fund it. That's basically what he did.
Yeah, you're spot on.
And I was a huge Greg Norman fan when I was young. I love Greg Norman. Who didn't? And I guess I'm just like, I read this article at Hartford last week, and it literally was an article from 1994. And if you took out the name that he was saying back then and put in LIV Golf, you would think you were reading it today. Yeah. I'm not kidding. It was this article was written in 1994, and you literally would have thought you were reading it today.
I think burned him so bad. That's what I want to know. I want to know, who was it in the PGA Tour that burned Greg Norman so bad that he has this vendetta? Because I feel it. It's nothing that's like published. There's nothing out there.
Because he that's how the World Golf Championships came about. Because of Greg Norman pushing this world golf thing he wanted to do, this World Golf Tour, and then Tim Benchem, to combat that, came up with the World Golf Championships to make it more inclusive and have these big world events around the globe.
Interesting.
And make them more money, and then the players are like, oh, okay, and they don't go anywhere.
Do you know what I
accelerated? It's on steroids now with the amount of money.
Matt, do you know, you guys, do you want to know what other than the announcers, and especially that chick who is announcing, I don't know if you watched.
Because we haven't talked about this other than our text messages a little bit back and forth.
Well, that's because I dived in and I had to see it for myself. And I enjoy watching any golf. I'll admit it. I'm the biggest nerd on the planet. All my friends know that, but they got this chick that's announcing, and did you happen to see some of her stuff? Like, somebody hit one in the right rough, and then Dustin would hit. It's so funny. There's some hole out there. It's number 3 or number 4 on the regular course. You know what I'm talking about? Where she goes, "Oh my gosh, look out! This drive of Dustin's is going right. Everybody needs to take cover." And then this ball lands in like right center of the fairway, and she's like, "Oh, and it drew back left." Late or something like that. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so unprofessional. But here's my biggest take. I stood next to Dustin under pressure for 6 years. Okay. I know what kind of a person he is under pressure. He doesn't fucking say a word to anybody. And I'm sure most of your big time players don't do that. Did you notice how much Dustin was like talking to Gracie and that kind of stuff? How they were hobnobbing the last 5 or 6 holes. And I'm just like, this is not a fucking real pressure packed tournament. It's almost like Dustin knew, well, fuck, if I don't win, I'm going to still make $1.5 million. We're going to win this team event by 20. And speaking of the team event thing, are they going to break that fucking team up? Because they're fucking unbeatable. I mean,
that team is
how much
stupid.
I don't like.
Well, I guess they're changing this thing up every time, but I guess I read next year they're going to make it more like the team captains are going to draft guys, and they're going to make it more of a
competitive.
Well, they're going to make it more where the teams stay together.
And it's going to be 12.
A league. Sorry, it's going to be a league.
Yeah, it's going to be a league. They're going to change the name.
Gotcha.
So it's going to be a league, and so these teams are going to stay together. And you're going to be able to trade players, and send players. I don't know if they're going to use like the Asian Tour as their feeder system. They're going to send players down to the Asian Tour and bring guys up like double and triple A, or what they're going to.
So I was thinking about it this way, right? So every traditional league has owners of teams. There's no owners of these teams right now.
Right.
So I have to imagine that they may be coming down the pipe.
Can I add this? There's no owners of teams, but can I just tell you something? Doesn't have a lot of friends. Do you not think that the only fucking 2 players that went to Dustin's wedding were Patrick Reed and fucking Perez? Think about that. Just think about that for a second. That team was premeditated, and to get Taylor Gooch in there, I mean, you look at that on paper and you're like, this is like fucking Secretariat in the Belmont. These fuckers are going to win by 30 lengths.
Did you hear Taylor's comments?
The Ryder Cup.
I
Oh
couldn't
my
wait
gosh.
to butcher him. I couldn't wait to butcher him on my burner Twitter account.
Justin Thomas and those guys were having fun with him. They were
But
weird.
Yeah.
I do have to caution Justin Thomas and Rory McIlroy. They're starting to become the bitter face of the PGA Tour. With a lot
No,
of
that's
their
Billy
comments.
Horschel now. That's Billy Horschel
That's
for sure.
Billy.
Is it
I
Billy?
feel like
Because-
JT and Rory are kind of trying to carry the flame to
they're definitely trying to carry the flame, but they're trying to carry the message that goes along with it. And what you start to see on social media, especially over the past month, is that the tide is starting to turn against them, which is not good because JT has always been a fan favorite. Rory's had his ups and downs, right? Like the fans have turned against Rory multiple times, and then like the most recent Rory, like people love him because he's been so kind of honest within his interviews and so forth. But people like it's kind of shocking. I try to keep my pulse on this as much as possible, and all of a sudden you start to see those comments starting to turn. The tide is starting to turn to where it's like, we're sick of all the negative. Stop talking about it. Like, if you care that much, just go out and win on the PGA Tour. That's some of the comments that are coming from some of this stuff recently. And it's not good for them to be the spokesperson. Jay Monahan should be the spokesperson for the PGA Tour as to what
Billy Horschel
is
Billy Horschel's kind of overtaken that negative.
See, but I haven't seen a whole lot of Billy Horschel.
Well,
believe it or
he
not,
went
on
Yahtzee.
social media.
Matt, he went
Go
Yahtzee
today.
He went Yahtzee today.
Gave his press conference at Scottish Open today. You need to go see that.
Oh, I got to check it out. Yeah, I have not seen anything today.
He went Yahtzee today, and his big point was like, my big point is like, hey, fucking go. But his whole point is, you guys lied. You know what I mean? You lied. Dustin lied. Perez lied. You know, he's just throwing out names. You guys lied and said you weren't going when we all know now this was all premeditated and you were just buying yourself some time until this whole thing got put together.
Pat hit the fucking lottery.
Well, yeah, just ask him. He'll tell you.
He had the money shirt on.
He needs to. Don't even get me started there on that text I sent you about the. You know.
Well, I mean, there's Instagram posts. There's all this different kind of stuff. But my God, is it just like when you see these guys, you kind of wonder, what if the PGA Tour had set up some type of team event throughout the year, outside of the Ryder Cup and outside of this? Like, is that to come? I do wonder because I've always said this is going to push them.
It'll come.
It's going to be a team element to this world, this 3 or 4 global series thing they're going to have that are going to be worth a lot of money, and there's going to be some sort of team element to it. They're going to try to figure that out.
I think so. And I think it's only going to make the game even that much better. And my last little point here in regards to it all, and I've said this from the start, I didn't care where the money came from. I didn't care. I love the fact that there is another golf organization that is going to push the PGA Tour, because they haven't had that in such a long time, that it's only going to make them better. Competition always breeds a better end product for the consumer.
100%.
Capitalism, baby. That's what it does.
There you go. Hey, Lance, do you have? So it's kind of my trademark on when we wind down on these things. I like getting a little fucking hit and run on somebody. I love a little hit and run. Do you got 3 minutes for a little hit and run on a little topic? Okay, don't have to be involved because we've shared these discussions behind closed doors in hotels. Tell me your opinion on this new man. I'm gonna throw out names on this new breed of caddy that is anti us old school guys when it comes to social. I'm gonna fucking say it. Gino Benelli, Joel Damon's caddy, Aaron Fleener, who just won last week, bless his little heart, just stood there and stayed out of the way like all good caddies do and that kind of stuff. But Matt, me and Lance have talked about this. There's certain caddies that go on and tweet and put stuff on social media, and you almost get the vibe. Am I right, Lance, or am I speaking for myself? That it's like, hey, fucking look at me kind of guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When the cameras show up, these guys are always a guy like me and Lance under pressure. It's all business. When that red light goes on, we get the fuck out of the way. Don't even want to be seen. Let their players do what they want to do. Some of these newer caddies, Lance, do you think it's like they're looking for the red light on TV to go on and build their brand, if there is such a thing for a caddy?
Yeah, it seems
Pick it up.
Seems to give some guys out here now that want to become Instagram famous, and they guys like Gino and Fleener, and I've always got along well with those two guys.
I have too.
No problem with them as people. I have no problem with that. Now, is it the way I may try to do business? No. But I feel like, and I just talked about this with someone, and maybe you or I can't remember who it was at Hartford. We were talking about this thing. And I was like, these guys haven't been out here very long. And you got guys out here.
It was me. Yeah, it was me. You said that too.
For a long time. And they're going to rub guys the wrong way. It doesn't bother me. Do I necessarily like it? No. But I don't think ill will towards them. I don't dislike them because of it. But I just know there's some guys out here it's going to rub the wrong way because they're going to look at these guys and go, they've been out here for 5 minutes and they're doing, they're doing this, this, and this. And I guess just maybe it's the day and age we live in of social media and
right. That wasn't our window.
Right.
Yeah.
And so more, whatever. If it helps the caddy profession overall and bringing more light to what we do,
right.
Okay, maybe it could be some good that comes out of it, but it's not
right.
Just not what I would do. Like if they came to me and said, I don't know, if David said he was going to do, Netflix is doing the series on the PGA Tour, like the Drive to Survive with the F1, and they're doing the same thing with the PGA Tour. I guess that's where Joel Damon's heavily involved in that. And so Gino's getting mic'd up every week and doing these doing all these things. I guess maybe I'd have to go along with it with Davis a little bit if he said he was doing it, but I don't know. I would just kind of like be very minimal with it. I'd just be like, all right, yeah, I'll do it. But it's, anyways, you know how I am. And I just think it's going to rub guys the wrong way. Some of these older caddies that have been for 30 years, it's going to rub them the wrong way.
Yeah. Yeah. Gotcha. All right, man. What a great episode, Lance. Appreciate you, bro.
Lance, thank you so much for coming on. That was phenomenal. We have long overstayed our welcome.
Good luck
at your house, Lance. But thank you so much. I had no idea. I just looked at the clock. I'm like, no way. There's no chance. I'm like, that was an hour.
Oh, we could have done another 2 hours.
Lance, we might need you back on, bud.
Lance, you might be coming on for episode
because that was
2,
fantastic.
We don't want to keep you from the pizza and the Reese's and I want to say no.
Chipotle?
He's the only guy I know that eats Nutter Butters still too. I didn't even know they still made them.
Wow, Nutter Butters. Those are another good one.
They're better than Golden Oreos. They're the best.
I disagree. Okay, I got to go grab some dinner.
Thank you, gentlemen. Have a great night, and thank you once again, everybody.
Thank you for tuning in to Season 2 of the Pull Hook Golf Podcast. Make sure to hit subscribe and go to www.pullhookgolf.com for more